Welcome to a football show, Monday edition. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. We've got a lot to discuss today, as every human that works for the Tennessee Titans is in Miami at Cam's Pro Day. That is facts. I'm reporting that. Can you confirm that, PK?
I reported it, that the four
all humans?
Brinker, not all humans, Brinker, Borgonzi, McKenzie, Ziegler, Callahan, and Holtz. And I don't think that's everybody that's there. This is being interpreted in only one way. I think it could be interpreted in other ways. There are a couple pro days today being held by schools that have edge rushers that are of significance to the Titans, including North Carolina, Boston College. There's one other that's significant. I'm sure there's a scouting presence there, but these would be players that would be candidates at 35, I think, or in a trade down scenario where the Titans got themselves later in the second and in the third. I'm sure we're going to discuss this thoroughly. They also took Cam Ward out to dinner last night.
Ooh, okay. I'd like to know how there's nice restaurants in Miami. How nice of a restaurant did they go to? Let's see. Today you got Auburn, Boston College, Bowling Green, East Carolina, Iowa, Marshall, which is Mike Green.
Marshall.
Right?
So Marshall and
Mike
Boston
Green.
College are the two most interesting to me.
There you go. North Carolina, Northern Iowa, SMU, Toledo, UNLV, and UTSA. So missing out on all that Jaquez Hunter talk from Pro Days today. But look, they're all going to go to Miami. So are a lot of other teams. So if you want to jump into the comments, please give us, jump in there, thumbs up on the YouTube page, notifications turned on. Please do subscribe there. We do appreciate it. We have lots of content for all you fans of Titans athletics, but also all the other stuff that's going on in Middle Tennessee with the Predators, with college football. You got JT and Stoney over there as well. So make sure you check out all the great stuff on the YouTube page. And please subscribe on the podcast feed of choice. Make sure you also subscribe for just a couple of bucks a month, paulkuharsky.com. Sinkers Beverages. We've got movement, PK, on the draft party.
Excellent.
We've got movement and we've got plans, and it will once again be Sinkers Draft Party 440 Sports 3.0. So we're going to have another slight tweak. I think you guys are going to really like it, where we're ironing out the details. We're going to get the brain trust together this week and try to get all those details set in stone. And for those of you who have been for the last couple of years, number one, thank you. You guys are fantastic. It's so much fun to hang out with you guys on the first night of the draft. Last year on the second night of the draft, we might do something different this season as well. So it's going to be really, really fun. There's going to be great, thoughtful, dignitaries of many, distinguished dignitaries that will be there. There'll be great food, of course, and so we'll have a good time. So Sinkers Beverages, always great host of that party on Thursday night in particular. Generally, it's a fairly affordable ticket, open bar, good food, good hangs. Watch the first round of the draft. Do some live content. It's great. So we'll have some information for you guys on that coming up. All that money, of course, going to charity, the Our Kids Foundation here in Nashville, Tennessee. Something near and dear to my heart. So make sure you check all of that out. We'll let you know. Keep all the notifications turned on, so we'll get you that as well. And then, of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The best brisket in the city. I'm not saying that. You, the Nashvillians, voted for that, and the Nashville scene as well. So check all of that good stuff out. Okay. You guys having Graver on the show today, or is he at the Pro Day? Justin Graver, Cam Ward fanboy number one, which he may be right. Maybe I'm coming around on this. I've been shamed in the comments, PK, about my Cam Ward hatred, which is not real. But as a content creator and a person of that covers the Tennessee Titans and things in Nashville, Cam Ward's good for business. So number one, I'm down with Cam Ward. Okay, so Eddie, Trevor, all you guys, good to see you all. How much does a pro day? Let's start with pro days and their importance in general. How much does a pro day matter to the Titans, who did not, obviously Cam Ward in particular, did not throw at the combine, but they've now met with him, 2 times? They've had dinner and then met with him early on after the combine. They've got medical evaluations. They met at the combine. What exactly are you learning?
So last night would have been 3 times, and they'll still have a get together, in or around his hometown. But they have not seen him throw live. None of them. I mean, some, the Southeastern Regional Scout was at some of his games, and I think Brinker saw him live. I think maybe in his worst game of the season. And I don't know that Borgonzi would have been at any Cam Ward games because the Chiefs were not scouting Cam Ward. And maybe Rand Carthon did, but that's irrelevant to anything now. So I think one of their top executives saw him live once, and their scout saw him however many times, a regional scout sees a top quarterback in his area. But, Reggie McKenzie, Dave Ziegler, Mike Borgonzi, and Brian Callahan have not seen him throw live. So, it's significant in that they're seeing him throw live. I'm not pretending that it's not a big deal that all these guys are there. I'm shocked at how many people are like, well, he's clearly the guy. If this many people are going to see, I would think you'd flip that. If he was clearly the guy, they wouldn't need all these people there to see him and to have dinner with him and to congregate in Miami. I mean, I think they're still looking to confirm. And I'm not pretending I know where they are in the decision-making process, but to say they're sending everybody, so that clearly says he's number one, is kind of warped logic to me.
I agree.
I don't know, but you can't know. And by saying that everybody going there says he's number one is kind of not the most logical logic of her.
If this was a recruiting trip and the recruit had the power to choose where they were going, the more you would send, in theory, the full court press, if you will, you're putting on a recruit. If it's a free agent and you wanted to send a bunch of guys to a meeting to see a free agent, again, makes sense. Cam Ward cannot say no to the Tennessee Titans. So I agree with you. I think the theory, if they had just sent if it was just like Borgonzi and McKenzie, or Borgonzi and Holes, let's call it, right? Like if Borgonzi and Holes go down there, you could almost say, well, Callahan seems pretty convicted in something that he believes. Brinker feels pretty convicted in something he believes. You don't have all those guys at that meeting and that dinner with him if you're not still trying to get to know him enough to make decisions. I think what it tells you is that everything is still on the table. Everything is still an option. I think we're getting closer to it, narrow it down to two, which is trade back or draft Cam Ward. I think we're pretty close to that being the only two options.
I think we've already been there for a while. But, I mean, I don't know that it tells us anything either way. You want to spend as much time with this guy as you can, probably even if you're already heavy lean towards Cam Ward. Probably if you've already decided that it's Cam Ward, you're going to take every chance you get to spend as much time with him as you can, to see him throw, to have an opportunity to have dinner with him, to accelerate what you're going to know about him after he's in the building. But this is no lock that's the case. I think it's just too easy. And this other thing that people are saying was, well, even if he's not the guy, this cements, this continues the charade for everybody else that he's interested. I just don't think that the Giants are buying their interest or lack of interest based on what they show outward. They have the pick. If you want the pick, you have to go get the pick. You can't buy you can't A, buy that the Titans aren't taking him, or B, buy that the Titans aren't trading it to someone else that's interested. And your bigger concern is other people trading up to take the pick than it is the Titans taking him there, because if the Titans like him there, guess what? They're not trading.
Yeah. Jason says, I haven't been drunk since the last draft party, mostly because of how drunk I got at the last draft party. Good to hear from you, Jason, as usual. Good to see you're on the wagon this year. Even if you believe he's great, you want validation. That's it right there. And you want other eyes for him to help validate as well. Giants are ready to trade up, says Joe. Jameis is a hilarious signing. Look, we know the Giants are going to be there. We know the Saints are going to be there. A lot of teams are going to be there. And, of course, they're doing their diligence as well, not the least of which, by the way, is a whole lot of other draftable Miami players.
Is Jameis not going to look? I mean, Jameis didn't solve anything last year in Cleveland, which was awful and messy situation. Not quite as awful and messy as the Titans based on draft order tiebreakers. Slightly less messy and awful. But would you rather have Jameis Winston in your quarterback room right now, or Will Levis and Brandon Allen?
I would rather have Jameis Winston and Will Levis together. I think that would be just interesting. I know you disagree. I know
I don't care about the interesting. I care about the quarterbacking.
Oh,
and I know Jameis Winston's going to have some terrible games, but I also know he's going to have some good games that he'll win. And Titans haven't had a lot of 4 touchdown games or 3 touchdown games. Go back to Atlanta last year in Will Levis's debut. Yeah. But, a huge burst of offensive output from the passing game doesn't happen that often here. And Jameis Winston's capable of that. Brandon Allen and Will Levis are not.
I think Will Levis is capable of an outburst like that. I don't think Brandon Allen is, but not at the same level as Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, again, forget the off the field stuff. Forget the weird kind of. I find him to be this hilarious personality, unintentionally so.
I find him to be an idiot.
I know you do. Sometimes I think idiots are funny though. Through no intentionality there. What I think is interesting is that the games will be interesting though. The actual football for 60 minutes. Who the hell knows what would happen on any given Sunday with Jameis Winston as the quarterback?
He's a remarkably interesting guy, right? Because his floor is incredibly low. And his ceiling is incredibly high. How many guys have we seen with his career where it's a complete dice roll during warmups? Is this guy about to throw 3 touchdowns or is he about to throw 3 interceptions? Well, I mean, it is interesting.
Some other folks are chiming in here, Joe and Bo and everybody. This is worth saying. Do you think the longer this goes with some of these other quarterbacks that there's a chance that they're going after one of these guys? It seems like
they would have done it if they were going to do it. I think they would have done it with Flacco or who else is out there. I mean, they've never been in it for Rodgers. And they've never been in it for Wilson. So who's left that we would have them consider?
Just asking.
No, but who's left? Flacco.
I still think to your point about Winston. Let's go on this hypothetical journey real fast. And somebody said 17 game. Joe says 17 games of Winston for your job. No thanks. I'm assuming you're talking about Brian Callahan there. And what's interesting to me is the way you describe Winston and the way we talk about Winston from an on the field volatility standpoint does feel like the opposite of what Aaron Rodgers would deliver to you. Now, just go with me for a second here, because I'm not saying it's real or it's an option. But if you want a sort of low ceiling, high floor of consistency, and you want Callahan to show people that the system works, getting the football processed quickly and to the right place quickly is the thing. That's the only thing Aaron Rodgers does anymore. He's not necessarily going to win you a bunch of games, but wouldn't Rodgers be the one guy that kind of even Wilson has mobility and runs around, and Dan Moore's sack numbers are higher because he's hard to protect. And isn't Rodgers the one guy that just sort of gives you this flat line of performance?
Yeah, but there's too much other shit that comes with them that makes it difficult for you to build the culture that you're looking to build. I really believe that. I think they believe that. I mean, the Titans name hasn't surfaced with Aaron Rodgers at all, or Aaron Wilson, fine reporter from the Houston area.
Former safety for the Cardinals, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds right. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, who are both still available, they're just not in. They don't want what comes with them.
Carson Wentz is not an option.
No, and Carson Wentz, I think, is
serves no purpose.
No. Yeah. So to me, the one guy's Flacco. Look, they decided what they're doing with those veteran guys, and it's not signing them for whatever reason. Which makes it seem to me I would think it's very unlikely they go into the season with these 2 quarterbacks as their guy, unless they're really, taking the stopgap route, which I'm not entirely dismissing, but it seems less likely than a scenario earlier where they signed somebody, a notch better than Braden Allen, who's starting caliber, no matter how low starting caliber. Braden Allen is a Brandon Allen, is a low caliber backup.
Yeah.
I get so frustrated talking about him. I can't get my head.
It's fair. Yeah. And here's the thing. I watched the Aaron Rodgers documentary. I don't know why. I couldn't sleep. There was a lot of self-service in there as well. I also do think that the Aaron Rodgers, and there's not really a reason to this conversation, except for I found the documentary interesting. I don't think that the locker room stuff is as big a problem with Aaron Rodgers as people realize. It's the same way I think fans look at players that sit out bowl games, like the Cam Ward, for example, here, sitting out half of a bowl game because of certain reasons. Every fan likes to look at that and say, "Oh, you're quitting on your team." Except for the people that support that player the most are the players on the team.
Teammates.
And I'll never forget, Nick Bosa got hurt in week 1 of his last season at Ohio State against TCU. Got hurt, sat out the rest of the season. They were going to try to win a championship that year, and his biggest supporter was C.J. Stroud. And so, this whole idea that Rodgers being weird and quirky and unvaccinated and all this other shit, I don't think it matters to players. I think he's a good guy in the locker room, and people like being around him in the locker room. And I think the extra stuff towards the media could be a headache, but I actually don't think it's I don't think it's a big deal behind the scenes. I think he would have given them a certain level of accomplishment this year. The question is, and you mentioned this on your show, go listen to PK podcast. They're not tanking if they don't draft Cam Ward, but they're stalling. And I think that's a great way to look at it. If they roll Brandon Allen and Will Levis out there, I think Levis probably plays the majority of the games. They both play a lot, and they don't win a lot, and they're just stalling for Arch Manning. There's no good saying here, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller. There's no stall for, whatever. But I think that's a right way to look at it. It's not tanking. It's just pause. We're just going to do everything else. It's a slow play, and I think that's the right way to look at it.
Yeah. Look, guys may like Aaron Rodgers because they get to play with Aaron Rodgers, and that's a big deal. But his game is more limited than it's ever been. Not that he's not the best of the options that are out there. That's not saying much.
Yeah.
But I do think he's a divisive force in the locker room. He doesn't follow the same rules other guys follow, and that's a tough place to be when you're trying to build a culture that's a draft and develop culture. And guys come in, and everybody's expected to, hey, this is how we're going to operate. But then you watch the quarterback, and he doesn't operate that way.
Well, and that's even worse with Russell Wilson, right? That factor goes up 2x when you go from Rodgers to Wilson even. So anyway, not really a whole lot. We don't need to discuss it, but I did think the documentary was interesting. His ayahuasca trips. I'm assuming he had final edit on that documentary, so that part was very interesting. There's some complaints because there's some complaining in there, but there's also some interesting insight into his thought processes as well.
Just the fact that he's holding up now, his choices are very limited now. He's probably going to end up in Pittsburgh. I don't know what his alternatives are to Pittsburgh, but this is the time that people sign. So why do you have to be different than everybody else? You're making organizations look foolish. You're throwing off their timetable. If you sign with Pittsburgh, doesn't it start off bad? You made us wait. You screwed up our whole thing. You put us at risk. We were nervous. And now you come in like a savior when actually you threw our whole offseason into disarray. Look, so you come in as a guy that threw us into disarray.
You know this as well as anybody. Different rules for different fools. And when you're arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, you have different perspective on things, I guess. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, that's how this works. Here's an interesting question from Eddie. Let's be real. Even if they take Cam Ward, they're still tanking, maybe involuntarily, but they've got the roster to have the 26th number 1 pick.
How are they tanking? They've signed 10 free agents. I mean, they're not leaving holes blank. They may make a trade to get themselves some more draft capital, and they draft the best quarterback in the league. That's not tanking. You're misunderstanding the definition of tanking. Tanking is being bad on purpose. How are they being bad on purpose if they draft the number 1 quarterback in the draft? If they've spent money on Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler, if they've done what they've done, that's not tanking. You don't understand what tanking means.
I think Eddie was kidding about the tanking, but he actually mentioned
be funny if you're going to put a joke out there.
He said involuntarily. He said it wasn't on purpose, and I think the point is valid, which is even if you draft Cam Ward, there is still this element of we're not there yet. We still have a ways to go.
They're not there yet. I mean, we've spent most of the offseason talking about how it's going to take 2 off seasons for them to get good, and we said the same thing last year, and they screwed it up so bad that they stalled the whole year. They lost the whole year.
So somebody said this earlier that I'm kind of slowly, it might have been Ed, slowly coming around on the Cam Ward thing. I just want to ask your personal opinion. Has your perception of the Cam Ward pick at number 1, has it evolved at all over the course of the last month and a half, in your opinion?
It has some. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too fearful, and maybe I'm being too my expectations too high about the idea that you can look at a guy who does have a lot of upside and consider the idea that you can be brave enough or bold enough or outthink other people and pass on that. I mean, that's a pretty big ask. And I don't know if I'm an outsider looking at another team in a similar situation. Would I expect Cleveland to look at his warts and say, no, we'll wait? Would I expect the Giants to? I don't know. They've got a lot of holes on their rosters, and I'm not looking at them expecting them to pass. I'm looking at them expecting them to trade up, super thirsty, dehydrated, and quarterback desperate. So why am I applying a different standard to the Titans and a different expectation of patience? I could see a very strong argument against what I've been thinking all along here. And the next guy, I think, in next year's draft will be better, but he's not going to be wart free. He's not going to be Andrew Luck, and they're not going to be, if he is Andrew Luck, they're not going to be in position to take him. Or if they are in, I don't think they're going to have the number 1 pick in the draft next year. And I think if they're, you know, if they need to trade up for him, then all of this gathering of picks that I'm in favor of them doing this year, you know, then they're giving it up next year.
Again, I've said this a number of times on this show with you and with Nick. They have enough tape on. They don't have a lot of tape on Arch, but it seems like it's very clear. They have enough tape on Drew Aller, I think, to make a comparison between the two and feel convicted between the two of them. I think they have enough tape to make a decision between Garrett Nussmeier and Cam Ward. I think they've got an idea of that. And normally I would agree with you. They're not going to have the number 1 pick next year. With Brandon Allen and Will Levis at quarterback, I disagree. And the statistical probability of this is way different than I expected it to be. The Jags have picked back-to-back years at number 1. The Browns picked back-to-back number 1 overall pick, and the Bears had the number 1 pick overall, all within the last 10 years. It's happened 3 times.
Bears was a trade.
Well, no. They traded out of the number 1 pick. They had the number 1 pick and traded it to Carolina.
Oh, okay.
They were the worst team in the league twice. And the Browns and the Jags back-to-back. It's not – my point is I would have – if you had said, hey, what are the odds of the Titans being the worst team in the league again next year, I'd have said pretty low. And then I went and looked at it and I realized, oh, it's happened 3 times in the last 10 years. And so I do think there's a bet, like, especially if you're going to tell me that Brandon Allen and Will Levis are the planet quarterback, don't tell me that 4 and 13 isn't the probability again. It's possible. And at that point, if you're picking 1, 2, or 3, you might still firmly believe in the other guys, but you have to really, really believe that Cam Ward is not the answer. And I'm seeing a lot of folks in the comments agree with you, Paul, that it's fearful is the right word, Alex says about this, that it's what you're passing on versus the fear of what you draft if he's bad.
Not just what you're passing on, but even with some more likelihood maybe than we expect that they could get number 1 again, what you're passing on when it's right in front of you versus waiting and the unknown about the ability to get your hands on him next year. And that's a lot of forecast. I mean, there's a lot of forecasting going on right now, right? You're forecasting what this guy can be. Yep. Now you're saying, well, let's forecast a year out as to what happens with this guy. And there could be a shredded Achilles for one of those guys and a bad season. Now I fully expect 1 or 2 or 3 of these guys are going to have a big year and their stock's going to shoot up, and quarterback stocks generally shoot up. But I'm playing a risky game. And I don't know if they're willing to play that risky game. And I am, here's the number 1 reason I am where I am. Because I think that Cam Ward's deficiencies align too much with Will Levis's deficiencies, accuracy and decision-making. And so if you've just spent 2 years as an organization and 1 year as a head coach watching bad accuracy and decision-making, I don't see how you watch tape of Cam Ward And when the bad decision making and the accuracy comes on, your screen doesn't go woo, 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 and you go, oh crap, I can't do that again. Yeah. I want a new quarterback, and whatever his warts are, I need them to be different warts than the warts that I just dealt with. That is just, I feel that in my bones. Yeah. And I think the people who are way into Cam Ward, I understand why they're way into Cam Ward, but I think they're doing a really good job of sloughing that off.
Yeah, there's a lot of passes he misses down the field. And that's and the other thing is that he and Will Levis are wired the exact same way. Uber intense, super passionate, it could be a huge benefit for Cam Ward that that's the way he's wired. For Will Levis, it has been a problem. It's been something he has to work through. And it doesn't mean he can't or whatever. So let me get to some comments.
And here. I want intense and passionate in my career.
I agree.
For sure.
I agree. I mean, all the guys that we talk about, Brady, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, for all their flaws, the competitive spirit ain't the problem in any of those guys. No. Toe and Mo says, I really hope we take Cam Ward. This is a good one here. Richard says, I just hope these guys can evaluate talent because I like how the plan looks so far. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Cam is
let's pause on that for a second. Like this free agency period feels a lot more. And I promise to go into this very skeptical, more skeptical than usual, because I've done too much buying in the last 2 years. But last year was one of those free agency periods. You say, I liked a lot of the moves individually, but I said repeatedly, the team that wins free agency in March usually isn't the team that you're talking about in September, October, November. And that's how it panned out. Now, a team like this gets panned a little bit in free agency, overpays for somebody, whatever, right. But it's generally viewed as quiet and not a story.
It's so weird.
They're the kind of teams that usually do show up in a way.
I know. It's very strange. It's totally counterintuitive both directions, but It is what it is. Joe says Cam is the consolation prize for not trading. I will say, if you can't find a trade partner, that might be concerning about how other teams are valuing Cam Ward. But it is, take the guy and take a chance. The worst thing that can happen is he's not great and you pick again in 3 years. That could be worth the risk, which is certainly what they're debating right now. Alex, as I already mentioned, I read your comment there. Jason says, I spent months thinking he sucked because people said he sucked, but I was blown away when I actually watched him. I hope you don't think I was one of those guys. Like, I don't think Cam Ward sucks. I think I have questions about whether or not he's the number one overall pick. And here's what I would say to the question I gave you, which is, how has this evolved? Number one, I thought Cam and Shedeur were about even in January. That I've changed significantly. I thought they were all kind of, Milroe might have been number 3, like right in that group. And I thought they were all like kind of 20, 21, 22. Well, Milroe to me is much, much further down the board. Shedeur Sanders is kind of right there still for me. And I would say I probably had Cam Ward between 15 and 23, let's say, in the draft. Just use that as a number in the big board. I would have him now in that 8 to 12 range. And that's how I feel. Like, he's clearly separated himself in my mind. I think he's probably better than my initial reaction to him. But all the problems, the concerns, I should say, not problems, but the little things that bothered me about watching him at Washington State and Miami for the last 3 years are the same things I now am concerned about with him transitioning to the NFL. And we've been through this, 100 zillion times here. So Bo says Lenore Sellers is a beast. I don't know if he's an NFL prospect as much as people think he is right now. I think he's got a lot of work to do. Donnie says, haven't seen enough of Arch either. I agree we haven't seen enough of him. That doesn't mean he's not clearly graded ahead of Cam Ward, and not by us, PK, but by folks that are doing this for a living. Let's see here. You're also passing on Abdul Carter by taking Cam. How do you feel about that? Abdul Carter tweeting today about being number 1 and the best player in the draft.
Abdul Carter's sinking for me, and that's part of why I'm making more allowances now for Cam, because I'm really concerned about that foot. Maybe unnecessarily, but stress reactions turned into stress fractures on a big man's foot who needs to torque around the edge is not good. And I think there's more in his background than we know, more than alleged assault of a tow truck driver that wound him up in in anger management. I think he's also got a marijuana charge on him. Look, that's not a big deal.
Yeah,
but are these signals of decision making questions? Yeah. So you stack the pot on the assault, and then you hear that there's other stuff in his past that is sealed. And I've heard he's a super alpha. I think the Titans need a super alpha, but super alpha can go like, I like my glass to be, almost to the top on alpha. If it's overflowing alpha, it could turn into a problem. So I have more questions about Abdul Carter than I had at the combine based on some of this stuff, which makes me less confident about, just get out to 3 and take Abdul Carter. Because I don't think he's like unquestioned. The health stuff concerning me maybe more than the other stuff. I really think that the safest play is to get to 3 and take Travis Hunter. But I'm for something's holding me back about my excitement about Travis Hunter too. So right now I'm dissatisfied with virtually every scenario, which is preposterous.
It's very, very Paul Kuharsky of you.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Michael Williams scenario.
Like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I love,
because then you're guaranteed a payout.
I love trading back to 3 to get Travis Hunter. I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I think the consolation prize of Abdul Carter is also pretty damn good. I think those are both great things for the franchise to build on. By the way, I'm going to head up to Sinker's Beverages after we're done and see if they've got any alpha that I can pour into my glass. I'm going to figure that out and see what Sinkers is selling. Do they have, is it like Alpha Light? Could I get Alpha Light? I'm
picturing this in a pint glass, just so you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. Actually, it might be like a highball glass with like I could see it also being
a twist.
Yeah, like a highball glass with like some sort of like probably some sort of like herb, that's mixed in there, something like a mojito or something. Alpha. It's just what it's called on the shelf. Alpha. It's a new product category at Sinker's Beverages.
Well, that could be our $1 million idea, except that we need to nest it somehow, and I don't have that.
We're gonna need a few rounds of funding, I think. Maybe Abdul Carter could be the spokesperson and fund it for us with his new contract that he's going to get in a couple of months. Sinker's Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year. Sign up for the In Crowd. They will give you emails and all kinds of really cool like access to things like allocations and bourbons and fancy stuff that they put out early and ahead of time. You'll get access to that when you sign up for the In Crowd. Award-winning beer fridge, craft beer fridge. The weather's starting to get a little bit warmer. You're going to need some cold beer. Make sure you go check out their beer fridge. A lot of great local breweries. They support a lot of good local companies, so go check those out. And for all you non-alcoholic drinkers, they got THC, they got non-alc stuff. They got all kinds of cool stuff up there. Mocktails, so go check it out. Good merch as well. They got good hats, so you can get some stuff there. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Less than 10 minutes from downtown, PK, the official barbecue of the Houston Oilers. Make sure you check that out. Cam Ward can actually process information on a football field, unlike Levis. This is actually an interesting point here early. I want to make sure I touch on this. Donnie says this. It's not necessarily about the mistakes that Cam Ward or Will Levis makes, which I agree with you, Paul, are similar in sort of analyzing them right now. It's that Will doesn't make enough good plays to offset any of the poor plays, all of Josh Allen's play. It's like the Brett Favre theory of quarterbacking, I guess. What do you think of that?
I think there's something to that. I think Cam certainly would make more good plays to offset the bad plays. I think, and Callahan talked about this, like you don't want to take that out of a guy who's kind of using Mahomes as an example. Like the temptation with Mahomes at the beginning would have been, no. But then it turns out that his whole quarterbacking style is based on that stuff, and you would have killed his game if you had taken that stuff out of it. And Kansas City handled that beautifully in his upbringing. But at the beginning, what you're going to want generally is some more cautious, safe stuff, and you leave the door open for some of that creativity. In some of those plays where you're saying no, yes. And you need to be very kind of gentle and calm with that stuff. And we don't know about Brian Callahan and how he handles something like that. That's why this is a big test for him. And that's why the people who are saying, well, you can't draft Ward because a year from now, it could be somebody else. If Ward is the kind of quarterback you take at number 1, you absolutely can draft him. It's less than ideal that he could have a different coach in a year. But quite frankly, if he's as good as many of the people in our chats and the like think, then Callahan could be fireproof.
Yeah, right. Here's what's interesting. This just kind of hit me. Thinking about, to your point about how Callahan communicates. I do feel like, and maybe this is just, I do think that their personalities should fit well together. That, like, I just, as a parent, you got to be the calmest voice in the room, right? When your 8-year-old starting to crash out, like, you got to be the calmest voice in the room. Callahan has a lot of that. Now, it doesn't mean he's not competitive. It doesn't mean he's not fiery, but he's got a kind of cerebral approach to everything and a kind of a calming approach to this. If Cam Ward's going to be the fiery guy and your head coach is a little bit more sort of chill, that's not a bad blend. That's not the reason you take him, but it's not necessarily a bad blend between the group there. Eddie says, are we going to hear a bunch of noise about the Giants and Titans talking with all the brain trust down there? Is that a thing that happens at pro days, or is that just every chance anybody gets a chance to talk, they're going to be talking?
Yeah, look, at this day and age, with the texting as prominent as it is, you don't need to see somebody face to face to have conversations. Now, can it spur it? Sure. Again, it's getting closer, so it could be check-ins, but
as you text on the show.
Yeah.
Jordan says God's plant is a plus, Paul. It helps the anger management. I agree, Jordan. Good reference there, my guy.
I'm not a user. Never tried.
Can Denard handle him? I believe Joe's talking about Abdul Carter. I think Denard can handle most of that. So, yeah. Let's see here. Braden really going to pretend like he didn't have Milroe as QB2, QB1. I did. I absolutely just said that. I had them all about the same. I thought Milroe was the best, and I've changed my opinion on that.
Somebody's asking if the Titans will allow Cam Ward to wear number 1. I hope not. I hate this thing where players come and ask a player or a team, and he would have to ask Warren Moon for permission to wear number 1, which is retired by the franchise. And I hope he wouldn't even ask Warren Moon, because then you put Warren Moon in an awkward situation. But the number's retired for a reason. And I think the kid, if he's drafted here, should come in and look to 11 or something. But, I think that's a big ego move to come in and go to Warren Moon, an all-time great, and say, hey, can I wear your number? I shouldn't even cross his mind.
I don't have a problem with it, honestly. If you've been number 1 your whole life.
I've been number 1 my whole life, and you're a Hall of Famer, and I've done absolutely nothing. Can I wear your number?
Did he? Okay, here's my tiebreaker on this, because I kind of see it both ways. I kind of agree with you, and I kind of agree with
it's on the wall for a reason.
He never played in a Titans uniform.
So what?
He never played in a Titans uniform. You could retire 2 number 1s. Titans 1 and a Oilers 1. I don't know.
He wore 7 at Washington State, Jabari's saying. So he'd be perfectly fine. And
7's good. 7's a great number. That was my number.
You doesn't have to call Pastorini for that. That was Pastorini, right?
Yeah, that's right. Let's see here. I'm trying to get through some of these comments before we get to some of the other news that's swirling around the Titans. Make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Ed says, I need to see how the quarterback plays in big moments in the fourth quarter. You need to throw or you need that first down. What does he do? I think he's had a few of those brilliant plays where he escapes pressure, does something magician-like in the pocket, makes a big play. He has also done that and made mistakes.
You're not going to see that stuff today, by the way. This Pro Day is on ACC Network and maybe on NFL Network at 3 Central. Let's not get crazy, please, with the oohs and ahs against air. Please.
Agreed. Jordan says, Braden, your take on Callahan being even keel nature is interesting, giving the 2 top storylines of year 1 were him yelling. Honestly, I think his what the fuck are you doing to Will Levis was as calm as a head coach could deliver that message based on what Will Levis had just done. Don't you think?
I think the reaction to that by anybody that had an issue with it was incredibly prudish.
Meaning criticizing Callahan.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what Jordan was doing. I just don't think it was a fiery response. I think he was, if you watch Will Levis make that play, you're going, what the fuck?
I also, he said what everybody said. I also think it wasn't a definitive moment of his season. I mean, I think the definitive moment of the season is they won 3 games. It's not a moment. It's it's a wrap. They were
If-
they were worse than people expected them to be.
Now that was against
That was the second game, the Jets.
that was the second
right?
game. The Jets game. The number one biggest crazy moment that defined Will Levis was the Bears play.
Yes.
Like that was the play, unfortunately.
That he followed it up with the Jets play. Was,
Yeah, I know.
That was the symbolism.
I honestly hope he wears 0. That's Calvin Ridley's number, and I don't know. I can't. I really don't care what number people wear.
I don't either. I can't imagine how fascinated people are with this and why. Are you 12?
I don't love the. There was a kid for Ohio State last year that wore 33 in honor of like some really old football player, like Otto Graham or something, which is kind of cool. I don't like the idea of a quarterback being like number 96, like Devin Gardner did for Michigan. I don't like that in the NFL. But 0's fine. Whatever, doesn't bother me. Moon went to Washington for college. Cam Ward, Washington State rivals. That's it. That's a fun point. I appreciate that. A lot of you guys in the comments here. All right, real quickly here. This question, and we were going to spend a little bit more time on this, but this might be where we finish. If you do take Cam Ward, and Nick Suss presented this to us and to me on Thursday's episode, so you can go listen to that. But I wanted to present it to you because if you do take Cam Ward, and I played with a bunch of mock drafts this morning selecting Cam Ward at number one, you almost have to trade down at 35. You almost have to. I think you might need to do that regardless of what you do. But it's hard to fill your needs if you don't trade back at 35. There's going to be a really good player, probably a better receiver than there is an edge rusher at that point. But somebody could fall. Frankly, a Harold Landry type prospect probably could fall into their lap at 35 in theory. So the question that Nick posed was, if you take Cam Ward, you've got some needs on both sides of the ball. Edge is the biggest need on the roster. Do you do what's best for the whole roster and try to just sort of stay the course and take the best player at the best position of need, according to your board? Or do you sort of lean towards taking pieces that will make Cam Ward's job easier, i.e. a wide receiver there, maybe an offensive lineman later, maybe a running back or a tight end later, maybe two receivers? And James Foster played with this on your website, Kuharsky.com. Where are you at on that?
I disagree with Nick's premise that the receiver outright benefits Cam Ward more. Titans averaged 18.3 points per game last year. They gave up 27. Do you give him 7 points or do you take away 7 points? If the edge rusher comes in and helps save you 7 points on the defensive side of the ball, that can be just as helpful to Cam Ward as helping him add 7 points. What nets me the 7 points? Do the calculation in your draft room head. And if you're getting an edge rusher that's going to get you off the field on third down, that's going to stop touchdowns and turn them into field goals in the red zone, then I'll take that guy. If you think this guy's going to be scoring touchdowns and creating first downs and getting you into the red zone and getting you into the end zone from the red zone, then take that guy. But I think it could have equal effect on Cam Ward's success. I don't think it's a straight wide receiver versus edge. One of them's on the field with Cam and one of them's not. And so therefore one's more helpful than the other.
If you're talking about winning games, I think your point is 100% correct. A bona fide top flight receiver does make Cam Ward's job easier on a play-by-play basis, not a game winning basis, which ultimately is the goal. But if you're talking about, and we don't know what their plan would be with Cam Ward if they draft him, if he's a sit and wait behind Levis and Allen kind of thing or what, we don't know. I assume if it's Levis versus Cam Ward, that Cam Ward's going to be your starter pretty quickly. Maybe Allen eats up some games if he wins the starting job, quote unquote. I do think that if you were to trade from 35 to 40 and take a really good receiver at 40, whoever might fall. I've seen Ibuka and Burden fall to that point sometimes. I don't think that's going to happen, but it might. Jalen Knowles, my guy. I've been on that bandwagon. I know Jack Besh is your guy. I like him a lot too. Both those guys you might have to take in that 40 to 50 range based on where they're moving. But if you trade back to 45 and you take a receiver, you come back in the 4th or 5th round, you get a tight end, and then in the 6th round, you get a running back, and you've done all this building of the offensive line in the offseason, you are going to make his play-in, play-out life easier for him to adjust to the NFL. That is, I think edge is a bigger problem and a bigger hole, and they need to address that. I also don't think you can get good edges later in the draft. You can get receivers and tight ends and running backs later in the draft. You got to take one at 35 or 40 if you're going to take an edge player. I don't see too many difference-making, game-changing pieces in the draft at that position that are going to do what you say, which is account for 3.5, 4 points a game. I don't think there are those
Not
players.
a game, but every other game.
Yeah, sure.
Every other game, and give you the ball on the 35-yard line once in a while, and have some impact. I do think it's just such a big hole. They're both really, really big holes, and I think you and I and Nick would all agree. I mean, trading from 35 to 45, if it gets you 45 plus something in the third,
62, 65, 68, something like that.
Would really be good.
Here's the thing. When you play around with the mock draft stuff, if you can get Cam Ward at 1 and Luther Burden at 35, that's a massive upgrade in talent on your offense. Massive. You have to believe in what you've done along the offensive line. I think you have to believe that first and foremost. And you have to be willing to address defense later next year. You got to be willing to do that. And this is the edge class supposedly to draft. Yeah. This is the class to draft somebody in the first round. This is the edge class to do that with.
I mean, I've said repeatedly, they're not going to be able to fill everything in 1 year.
Yeah.
And so you got to pick your poison. It would be a delight if the thing that they couldn't fill was tight end and running back 3 and all of these, but doesn't seem.
Wide receiver in the 3rd, should you get that pick by trading back somewhere, somehow. Wide receiver in the 3rd, tight end or running back in the 5th and 6th, I think you can get really good pieces at those 2 positions. You cannot get a meaningful game-changing edge player beyond probably the top 50 ballpark. I mean, you got the LSU kid that I know James Foster's high on. Is it Simmons, right? Braden Simmons.
Yeah.
For LSU, I think you got the 2 Ole Miss kids, Princely and Ivy. You got maybe Jack Sawyer, who seems to be falling down boards, JTT at Ohio State, the 2 Ohio State guys. You're just not going to – you have to get somebody who falls out of the first round the way Harold Landry fell out of the first round to find benefit in that 35 to 45 range at edge. Once you play with the mock drafts, you cannot find a good edge player beyond that.
Yeah, Burden seems like the guy that could fall, and that answers your wide receiver question. I don't know. I think a lot of us think it'd be hard to pass on him at 35.
It would be. I did one mock draft where I traded from 35 to 36. And just continued and just drafted Luther Burden, which is great. And then added like a, 100 pick in the hundreds or whatever. So there's lots of ways to do this. Lots of paths to extra picks. I think you trade from 1 to 3 and then you trade from 35 to 40. You've probably added 3 more picks at least. And you've added a lot of talent in that situation. Now you don't have Cam Ward, but is Cam Ward worth all that extra capital? That's what you got to ask yourself, right? All right. So I think it's an interesting strategy, decision-making process from the Titans. We'll see, and obviously won't know until draft night. More information coming on our draft night, draft week situation.
It'll be big. I'm excited to get involved because it's very hard for me to be involved based on the timing of things. So we seem to have found a way to deal with that.
I love finding creative solutions for you, the audience, Titans fans, and creating good value to all of you guys and doing a little good for the kids in our community. So stay tuned for all of that. Again, turn on notifications and all that good stuff. Quickly, Lorenzo Carter signed as an edge player. You got Joey Slye, the kicker, signed to replace Nick Folk. 96 games, by the way, in 7 years from Carter. 62 games started. This is not a guy that in 7 years that hasn't played. 3 to 5 sacks a year. And I think if he gets 4.5 sacks this year as a rotational piece, that's a solid signing at that point in free agency, right?
Yes. I mean, a lot of people panicking about Slye, right? Slye, I don't believe for a second that Slye is like unquestioned the Titans kicker now. I think there'll be some competition for him at some point. I'm anxious to see the contract details on that. I think getting Tremon Jones, and now sorry, I'm just blanking out on the name.
Lorenzo
Carter. I mean, that's about as well as you're going to do in this secondary free agent. Yeah. They got some bodies in there who can conceivably contribute, and they had really like nobody after Arden Key that had any experience or could bring you anything. And so I think that's satisfactory work in there that doesn't change the draft urgency, but gives you something. Yeah. And something is a lot better than nothing.
Hey, almost 100 games in 7 years, if anything else, is professionalism. There is some element of professional football player in there for Carter, and I like good professionals, guys that have been around and know what they're doing. Not going to be a huge difference maker, but they set the bar. They raise your floor a little bit and kind of set that backup piece to a certain point. Otherwise, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, and of course, PaulKarsky.com. Anything else? Ryan Tannehill? Are you excited by Ryan Tannehill?
More power to him if he could get back. Minnesota's hell-bent on finding some kind of veteran help. And they're going deep.
JJ's not ready.
They may go deep.
Well, that's all Ryan Tannehill knows how to do, so you can just throw deep. All right, more excited for opening day on a Thursday or Sweet 16 Elite 8 basketball?
Opening day on a Thursday. This tournament has not really captured my attention, though my BYU pick doesn't look too bad. My St. John's losing to them in the finals does look bad. Maryland
Rick Pitino losing to John Calipari is so chef's kiss. It's amazing.
The Maryland game was Maryland Colorado State. It was a very good game.
Yeah, it was.
But not a lot of last second intrigue from what I saw. Vanderbilt men and women out in a matter of hours was brutal. Disappointing.
Brutal.
Columbia women, I had a very close eye on. It's funny, they win a play-in game, which is a big deal to us. But then when you look at the bracket for years to come, they don't show you the play-in game. They lost the first-round game. So there's it's not anything.
Tennessee versus Kentucky is like every UT alumni's like worst nightmare in the Sweet 16 matchup. There's too many demons there for me. I'm just picking Kentucky because there's too many demons.
That game shows you exactly what's wrong with college basketball, right? I mean, it's all new guys on that team. There's nobody.
Oh, Kentucky?
Yeah. There's nobody any Kentucky fan would have had any affinity for before this year. But now they're as invested in those guys as is humanly possible. They could all be born in Kentucky for all you know.
Juan Soto just showed up and got paid to be a Met. I'm fine with that, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. Here's the thing. That wasn't all that different than how Calipari was doing it. Calipari was just doing it with freshmen.
Well, I hated it with him too, but at least they were freshmen.
Why do you hate kids making money? Why do you hate that?
Look, it's better when guys stay around and you get to know them in any sport. I don't. You like a lot of 1-year deals? This
transfer portal is just destroying the character of the neighborhood, guys.
It really is.
It's 2025. Come on. There'll be salary caps, and the new NIL deals are going to keep players in place longer going forward in the future.
Let's get to work. Eddie says, I hate fun and jokes. I don't know. How is this more fun than it was when a guy came and played for 4 years or 3 years and you got to know him? How is this more fun?
You got better faster? You recovered faster? I don't know. If you're Kentucky.
I know, a lot of teams get stripped. I mean, there's another side to the Kentucky story.
Belmont. Yeah. Belmont. I know for a fact, Belmont tried to pay a player about 70, 80 grand. That was their best offer to stay and play for Belmont. He instead is playing for Ole Miss currently in the tournament. And he got 5 times that amount from Ole Miss. And he's like the 5th or 6th guy on the team. You can't compete. The little schools, the smaller-ish schools cannot compete.
This is funny that there are NFL fans in here asking if I'm a communist when they're fans of the biggest socialistic enterprise in sports imaginable.
To be fair, I'm the one who asked that. He's quoting me. Jordan is clearly a listener of the other show, and I do appreciate you, Jordan, for putting the NIMBY in NIL, which is so
I don't want that NIL in my backyard. That's fair.
I only want it in your backyard. I want NIL in your backyard.
You let it destroy your program.
Build more NIL.
That's funny.
We have an NIL crisis in Nashville right now. No, it's housing, folks. It's housing.
Yeah, and Eddie says I'm the opposite of communist. I hate Russian state media, which I do, which the Titans.
That's also true. Also true.
And there's unfortunate news coming there that you're not going to care about, but affects us deeply. So
can't decipher between Russian state media and our state media these days. I do think that I always use that line though when I tell people, because the most diehard NFL fans tend to be a little bit more conservative in general, college football as well. Football fans in general, although it's everybody, tend to be a little bit more conservative, the diehards in particular. That I always find it ironic that they are diehards of the most communist socialist sport that does nothing but redistribute wealth to the poorest franchises. It's the most socialist sport we have.
Yeah.
Baseball is the opposite. Baseball is the other way. You got a billionaire owner who spends a bunch of money, just keeps it all and stockpiles it. The Dodgers are breaking rules to keep every player from Japan on their roster. Like, it's very different in baseball.
Yeah, I've got a billionaire owner who won't follow in his dad's footsteps and refuses to spend.
Well,
that's the worst. Be in the billionaires league and don't spend the billions.
Well, I have no problem with Steve Cohen spending all of his money on long-term contracts.
Not going to go as well as you think.
I don't have to. I don't think it. Are you kidding? I'm a Mets fan. It's not going to go well.
Right. Good. Good.
They're gonna score a ton of runs and hit a bunch of dingers and not have a single person be able to pitch. And then they're going to get to they might get to the playoffs and lose in 3 games. So
and get hurt. So they'll miss at least 30, probably 40.
Okay. Well, that's fine. It ain't my money. Whatever. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. Jabari says, unbelievable that Pat Ewing played 4 years at Georgetown. Unheard of now. Yeah, that's true. Or that David Robinson would go to Navy, right? Like that's nuts. All right. Thank you guys. Jordan is the listener of the day. I might just start awarding this at the end of each show, just giving an award to the listener of the day. But Jordan, you're number 1, my guy. Number 1. Build more housing. Paint it yellow and slap a turd emoji on it. All right. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course. PaulKuharsky.com. Make sure you check all that great stuff out. I think that does it for us, my guy. Otherwise, have a good one. Stay tuned for more draft information. I'll talk to you guys on Thursday with Nick.